Hey, this is super interesting. Last week, we did a piece about the $15 minimum wage, which I support. I've pointed out there are parts of the country where 15 is almost or even more than a doubling of the current minimum wage. And it may not be the cost of living adjusted wage, but big picture, I support a $15 minimum wage. And we talked about how this new radical, wacky Republican Congresswoman, Lauren Boebert, tweeted about the minimum wage, something really dumb. She tweeted, quote, "I got my start working at McDonald's. That job doesn't exist if the minimum wage is raised to $15 per hour. Small business would be crushed by this arbitrary mandate, and big business would simply automate away jobs. Not everything that sounds good is actually good in practice." And what is fascinating is that now it just so happens that the company she mentioned, McDonald's, has put out a statement about this. McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczinski did a fourth quarter earnings call with investors on Thursday after we had covered this story. And he said the company is doing just fine in states that have increased minimum wages beyond the federal minimum wage. And we are basically going to be fine. We will do just fine, even if minimum wages continue increasing in a variety of different states. Now, Kempczinski this was a call with investors. The point here is to reassure investors. It's not that Kempczinski wants higher minimum wages. It's not that McDonald's is now on for the fight for 15. This is merely a CEO talking to investors and saying, listen, 29 states already have higher wages than the federal minimum, and we're doing just fine. And this is what a 4-year analysis by a team of economists found for McDonald's, that in applicable markets where wages have gone up, and as I talked to you about before, DC is already $15 an hour. McDonald's is doing fine. California's 13 to 14 an hour. McDonald's is doing fine in California. Washington State is, I believe it's $13.69. McDonald's is doing fine in Washington State, and on and on and on. He was just reassuring investors of what we already know. And it is true that when the minimum wage goes up, the cost of products go up. But this is such a key finding. The study found that when the minimum wage goes up 10%, the cost of a Big Mac goes up 1.4%. Why would it be that if you have a bigger increase to the wage, the cost of the food only goes up a tiny bit? It's because, just as I said last week, labor is only a fraction of the total cost. You've got rent for these really expensive locations that McDonald's often operate out of. You have the cost of all of the capital. You have the cost of the food itself. You have insurance. You have all these different things. And yes, you have labor. And what we again learn is that labor is only one input, and you can do wage increases that are meaningful to the employees, and they have only a minor impact on the cost of a Big Mac. Now, clueless people like Lauren Boebert have been able to scam their way into positions of legislative power by attaching themselves to really bad ideas not based in science. Like, if the minimum wage goes from 8 to 10, then that's 25%. That means the food will all cost 25% more, and suddenly tons of people can't afford the food. That's not the reality. The reality is that meaningful minimum wage increases will have a tiny effect on the food, which, yes, the food will be a tiny bit more expensive, but way more employees now have money with which they can go to other local businesses and buy things. That's called demand side stimulus. So nothing of what I'm telling you today is new. We did this analysis last week, but hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, the McDonald's CEO saying, we've done the analysis. We have 29 states where minimum wages have gone up. It's fine. It's fine. And it leads to this tiny, tiny increase to the cost of a Big Mac. Now, I know that there will be the $1,000 an hour trolls, as I call them. But David, if $15 is better than $8, why not pay everybody $100 an hour? If more money is good, pay everybody $1,000 an hour. Well, no, $1,000 an hour is not a cost of living equilibrium minimum wage. $1,000 an hour is not an industry balanced minimum wage. There is no metric that justifies $1,000 an hour for people working at McDonald's. It is not a productivity adjusted wage. It is not an inflation adjusted wage. That would not make any sense. If you made the minimum wage at McDonald's $1,000 an hour, you would have doctors in many cases saying, I'm better off working at McDonald's. No, nobody's saying that. We're talking about 15, some more expensive places in the country would justify, 18, 21 in New York City, whatever. Nobody's talking about 1,000. That's called reductio ad absurdum. It's a slippery slope. It's a red herring. It's a lot of different things. So, again, a lot of what I'm saying here, we said last week, but now even the McDonald's CEO, when the CEO reassures investors, we're doing fine with higher minimum wages, you know that they're doing fine with higher minimum wages. So we'll keep talking about this. And this is part of a bigger focus that I think it's important to have on workplace issues, democratization of the workplace, gig economy stuff. I read some interesting articles over the weekend about different issues facing gig economy workers and how tech companies that are sort of exhibiting predatory behavior are taking advantage of them. We're going to keep talking about this, but as a baseline, we have to first build kind of the base of the pyramid. A lot of the stuff being said by the right about the minimum wage is merely disinformation, not supported by left-wing or even many right-wing economists, and we'll have more about it. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @Pakman. We will take a quick break and be back after this. It's February. It's incredibly February, and much to discuss today.